So, just walking through the backyard, I noticed that the mint here inside this flower bed is getting really out of control. Some of these little trailing pieces are starting to root themselves in the ground, and that's not really something we want, because then the mint will start taking over the entire surrounding area. And so I think I'm gonna have to thin this back quite a ways, especially since it's nearing winter time. And so I don't want to let it go to waste. So I think I'm gonna try to extract the volatile peppermint oils from them. This is about all I was able to collect. It's actually a pretty good amount. Lots of mint here, but I can't really do much with it in this large stringy form, obviously. So I'm going to use a blender to reduce its volume. Here we go, got the final volume of mint. It's quite large, and hopefully we should be able to extract some peppermint oil from this stuff. Usually you would grow the peppermint in slightly different conditions to increase the amount of volatile oils contained inside the mint, but this might work. I just weighed our volume of mint here and accounted for the weight of the plate. Only the leafy herbaceous material, it is about 422 grams, give or take a little bit, and for like impurities such as like leaves or other things that got blended down as well. And here I have the simple steam distillation apparatus, which we'll be using to remove the volatile oils. As you can see, I've improved my water cooling. I have a nice water pump in here in this 11-gallon tub, and then I have some actual nozzles and things which will allow me to use more water and thus keep the boiling mixture cooler as it begins to distill. I'll explain how this whole apparatus will work here in a minute, but first I'm gonna charge it with some mint and water. With much effort, I was able to charge all 420 grams of mint, and now it's time to add the water. So I'll open the stopcock here, which will release the water into the chamber with the mint. Initially I'm only going to add 250, but as it begins to boil, I will refill this container and adjust it to a rate where it drops the same amount of liquid into the chamber as is distilling over. So probably like 1 drop and then 1 drop. And basically what a steam distillation is there will be water inside here with this organic material, which has these volatile oils, as I've been talking about, mostly containing menthol and other organic compounds. And these compounds have a lower boiling point than the water does. And so as there's a little bit of water in here in the bottom of the flask, the water with this oil bath, which is heating up, the water will vaporize, go through the mint, and since it's got a higher boiling point than the oil does, the oil will travel up because it's volatile with the water, and then come in and distill down into the flask and sit on top of the flask, and it can be collected, and then I can run the liquid through my wonderful separatory funnel here and drain off the water and collect the liquid above, which will be the oils. It is kind of important to understand that the water is not necessarily dissolving the oil, but the oil is just vaporizing along with it, and so that's why they're able to be separated so easily after, just by letting the layers separate and level on top of each other, as oil commonly does on water. Now you can do extractions like this using a Soxhlet extractor, but what's going to happen is you're going to end up with a lot of residual ethanol or methanol or whatever solvent you use, and it's kind of hard to separate your essential oils from those solvents, and plus it's kind of a gross thing. I mean, not that I'm going to be using any of this, because glassware has been used for other things, but it's not very good or common practice to use an alcohol solvent to extract essential oils. Anyways, now I'm going to let this begin to distill over some liquid, and I'll show you once we have something happening. The first few drops of distillate have come over, and you can tell there's a film on top of them, and that's our essential oil, which is really incredible because, I mean, I guess it makes sense that most of the oil would come over in the early distillate, but that's fairly potent, it looks like, an oil content just from what we've got here. So I'm gonna now adjust the stopcock to have a slow drip rate into the solution, or into the peppermint mixture here, and then I'll show you once we get about 1,000 milliliters in here, because by that time I'm gonna call the distillation finished, and then we can start to separate the oil and our water mixture. It's been a couple hours now, and we're getting pretty close to the end. You can see that the leaves of the peppermint and the stalks have gotten kind of decomposed looking. Water still dripping at a constant rate. That's good to see. Same with over here. You can see it dripping. It's kind of difficult to see the oil, but you can kind of see that there's a little bit of discoloring from like right here to right here, and those differences are the oil. From the bottom you can kind of see the oil more, and also I don't know if the camera will focus enough, but you can see tiny droplets of oil getting splashed down into the water, like right there, every time a drop comes in. That's pretty cool also. Not that it's really that special or anything. The distillation has now been disassembled. The plant material looks further decayed, and I distilled over about 1 liter of liquid. As you probably can't tell, there you go. You can see there's some oil still finely dispersed on the top layer, although there's a much greater majority of oil in the separatory funnel here. It's a very thin skim, and so I'm going to finish removing this water below by opening the stopcock and letting it fill up into the flask, and then once the liquid or the amount of oil gets visible around here, I will then try to transfer the oil into this small ampule, or test tube now, but it will be an ampule once I'm finished. Unfortunately, as you can see, I was only able to collect a relatively small amount of oil, and that was mostly due to the fact that the oil ended up having pretty good wetting power on the glass, and like this blob here is oil, along with a few other of these, especially down near the bottom of the separatory funnel. There was a greater majority of oil that did not go or was not able to float on top of the water and then be separated. It ended up just sticking to the glass, and I washed the water through there many times, and I was able to collect like a drop more every single time, but that was really ineffective, and that's why I'm left with only that small amount of oil. I tried to use wetting agent, in this case I used isopropyl alcohol to lower the wettability of the oil and the water so that they would go down the separatory funnel easier, and it ended up making the solution cloudy by some precipitate or some oil alcohol complex. I'm not really sure exactly what it is, but I ended up just running this liquid through, and I didn't collect any of it because I didn't want to contaminate the little bit of good oil that I had created. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I know I learned a little bit about steam distillation, and perhaps in the future, if I try this experiment again, or anything involving organic volatile oils, I will try to look for a good surfactant which will lower the surface tension of the water and the oil so that they can be separated more easily, and perhaps it'd be better to use something with a higher oil concentration, because even if this were high grade quality mint for volatile oils, it would have approximately 0.3% oil, which, assuming that applied in this case, having 420 grams would only yield about 1.3 grams of oil. And I knew this going into the experiment, but I just figured it would be fun to try, and since it really wasn't that much effort to put it all together, and in the end I was able to collect a very small amount of oil, I would say it was a success, although the yield is extremely low, and this probably represents like a yield of around like 5 or 10%, I'd imagine. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed.